Graduation. My parents bought my brother a luxury car. I opened my gift a bill for their debts. So, I packed my things and vanished. Weeks later, they called. Panicked. Please. We didn't mean it. My name's Liam. I'm 23. And on the day my twin walked off the stage to applause, our parents handed him a luxury car key while they handed me a bill for their debts. Graduation sunlight made everything look soft. Like the cracks in our family had been smoothed over for the photos. Aiden, my twin, was grinning like he'd just been elected mayor of the campus. He's always had that bright center of the room, energy handshakes, backslaps. The easy way of being seen. I've never resented him for it. Not exactly. I just learned to be useful in the quiet. For as long as I remember, I was the kid who could fix the router, edit a paper at 2 a.m., and land freelance gigs that paid actual money. By the time I crossed that stage, I'd saved almost $30. 000 from coding projects and small contracts. I started at 16 money. I guarded the way some people guard family stories. Aiden studied business and collected people the way other students collect club t-shirts. I studied computer science and collected habits, budget, spreadsheets, time trackers, half-broken laptops I could salvage for parts. If there was a party, I was the guy in the corner helping someone recover a corrupted essay. Not the one leading a chant. You'd think twins would trade places sometimes, that we'd swap masks and confuse everyone. But not us. In our house, there was a golden child. And it wasn't me. We met our parents outside the arena. Mortarboards crooked, cords tangled. Mom Martha was sparkling with a kind of relief that looked like victory. Dad Greg was already tearing up before anyone said anything. To my boys, he said, voice thick, you did it. Then Mom lifted a small velvet box and clicked it open. Inside, gleaming under the sun, sat a key fob with a tiny roundel badge. Sleek, black, unmistakable. A surprise for Aiden, she sang, turning to him like he was the star that finally aligned. Just a little head start. Aiden actually jumped. I swear he left the ground. No way. No way. He grabbed the fob, eyes scanning the parking lot as if the thing might drive itself over on command. Where is it? Dad pointed across the rows of cars to a black sedan, shining like a mirror. Welcome to post-college life, son. I smiled because smiling is what you do when something impossible happens in public. I heard a fizz of cheers from a group of Aiden's friends close by. Someone whistled. Someone else said, "Dude, you're set." Then Dad turned back to me, pulled an envelope from his jacket, and pressed it into my palm. "And for you?" he said. Gentle. "Something we need to talk about." I thought maybe it was a letter. A check to help with an apartment deposit. A note telling me they were proud. I opened it right there. Instead of a card, a stapled packet slid into my hand. Lines and tables. Amounts. Due dates. At the top, statement of outstanding family obligations. At the bottom, total $18. Ling ling ling. He blinked. What is this? Mom's smile broadened in a way I couldn't read yet. It's only fair. Liam, you've been working for years. You've saved so much. It's time to help the family. Dad nodded, as if we'd arrived at a sensible intersection. Aiden doesn't have much saved. He'll need help getting started. But you, he squeezed my shoulder, you're responsible. You've got money. Aiden, clutching the key fob, shrugged with a half grin that was meant to be disarming. Come on. Man, you always say you don't care about money. The word fair stuck in my throat like a dry crumb. I looked down at the list again, and the numbers swam into focus. Itemized lines $3. 200 spring break airfare and lodging. Email. 450 social expenses, which I knew translated to nights out. Aiden posted about with filters and confetti. 5,000. 0 down payment on the very car now, throwing the sun back into our eyes. And scattered among those utility arrears, a dental bill for Dad. A pass du cable balance. It was a portrait painted in numbers. And half the strokes were Aiden's good time. Then something else. My eyes caught on a page I almost flipped past. 3 separate loans. Each with a familiar bank name. Each with a signature that looked like mine first and last where a co-signer's name should be. The curve of the L. The even pressure in the IM. My stomach dropped so fast I felt a pinch behind my knees. Why is my name on these? I asked. Steady, because I was suddenly somewhere else. Somewhere. Just a bit to the left of my body. Mom's eyebrows lifted in a, "You're overreacting" arch. We needed a co-signer. You would have said yes anyway. I would have said yes, I repeated. Get her. Factual first. Feelings later. That was how I kept my projects on budget and my life from fraying. I didn't sign these. Dad cleared his throat. Let's not make a scene. Aiden, trying for lightness, bounced the fob in his palm. It's not a big deal. You know I'll pay it back once I'm settled. There it was. The script we'd been improvising for years. The golden child gets a safety net. The quiet one gets a responsibility speech. I should have known this day would come because it had come before in smaller ways. Rehearsals disguised as favors. The rehearsals, when I was 19. Dad's card got maxed out during a slow month. Family steps up, he'd said. And I'd covered the internet bill for 3 months, $89 in March. $89 in April. $89 in May. The next Thanksgiving, I found a thank you card tucked into the napkin drawer blank. It made me laugh then. It doesn't now. Senior year of high school. Aiden's laptop died the week before finals. He got a brand new Mac on a promotional plan. And I got the old one once we pay it off. We never did. At my 18th birthday, Aiden blew out candles on a cake with his name iced by accident above mine. Mom scraped off the mistake with a butter knife and said, "We'll get you a cake next time." It became family lore. The kind people tell at gatherings, you know. The funny one about the cake. If you looked closely, you could see where the icing had been smoothed over. A faint scar on sugar. And money. Always money. Sophomore year of college. Aiden's club trip went over budget. It's just Kamatu. Subai. Mom said over the phone. Voice in that pleading turned practical register. You're so good with clients. Liam, you could pick up a project and cover it. I did. 3 late nights. A rush build. And a wire transfer later. I was the hero, no one toasted. So now, under a sky still shedding confetti, we were simply performing an old song more loudly. Only this time, my name was on documents I had never seen. And the harmony had turned into a legal chord I could feel buzzing in my bones. Did you forge my signature? I asked, not a shout. Not even sharp. Just a question placed carefully between us. Mom's smile flickered. Then steadied like a candle guttering and catching again. Honey. Don't use that word. We handled it. It's family. Dad put both hands up. Peacemaker posture. Let's talk at dinner. There's a reservation. Today's supposed to be happy. Aiden's friends called from across the lot, urging him over to see his ride. He hesitated, then glanced at me, as if the scene would resolve if I agreed to be reasonable. You good? He asked. I folded the packet along its staple line and slid it back into the envelope. Thank you, I said, the words tasting strangely metallic. For the real eye-opener. Mom exhaled. Relieved. Misunderstanding. We knew you'd understand. The 3 of them drifted toward the black car. A little constellation orbiting a new center of gravity. I stayed where I was, holding an envelope that felt heavier than a diploma. My reflection wobbled in the sedan's door when they reached it, Aiden running a palm across the paint like he was smoothing someone's hair. Dad, adjusting the rear view. Mom clasping her hands under her chin. At dinner. The table was set with cloth napkins folded into neat fans. The waiter poured water from a bottle that made a small, expensive sound. If you were a stranger watching, you'd think we were celebrating the same event. Toasts were made. To the future. Dad said. To opportunity. Mom added. To good choices. I said. And sipped. The subject of the envelope arrived when the bread did. Mom pushed a basket toward me. We'll sort the payment plan, she said. Practical again. It won't hurt you. You have so much saved. Just like you always planned. Planned, I repeated, and set the roll down untouched. I planned to build something. Not to pay for parties and a car that wasn't mine. It's not about the car. Mom said too quickly. It's not. I laid the packet on the table. Flicked to the page with the signatures. Because this right here is about my name. That's not a small thing. Aiden cleared his throat. It's a start. Man, I'll pay it. It's just, right now. I watched him search for a phrase that would make this moral math add up. He found the old one. The family code. And tried to pass it off like currency that was still in circulation. We're a team, he said. A memory shot up so clearly I could smell it. I was 10. Standing in the kitchen while Dad made sandwiches with mustard that always clung to the rim of the jar. Leaving a yellow ring like a stain, no one bothered to wipe. Aiden had skinned his knee. Mom was cooing over him on the couch. I stood waiting for someone to ask about the spelling bee list I'd nailed that morning. We're a team, Dad had said then, sliding a plate across to me, without looking up. The mustard ring hardened into a crust that we would pretend wasn't there. Small things become stories if you repeat them enough. And stories become rules. I should have known the day would end like this. I should have known the car key would come with a cost measured not in torque but in signatures. For as long as I remember. When Aiden leaped, someone spread a net. When I built, someone borrowed nails. I tucked the envelope back into my jacket and felt the firm edge against my ribs. We'll figure it out, I said, and watched relief loosen the lines around Mom's mouth. But I'm going to need to look into a few things. Dad raised a glass. That's my sensible son. I smiled back. I could be sensible. I could also read a document, call a bank, and ask for an original file. I could ask for a signature card. I could ask the questions that turn family lore into facts. Aiden was telling a story about test driving the car as dessert arrived. And everyone laughed at the part where the salesperson called him sir. The candle on the little plate sputtered once, then steadied. When we stood to leave, Mom hugged me longer than usual, whispering, "We're proud of you. Sweetheart, don't overthink. Okay, it's all going to be fine." Sure, I said into her shoulder. Over here, head. Through the restaurant window, I could see the black sedan catch the streetlights and throw them back like a promise. I felt the envelope press into my side, as if it wanted to speak. Outside, Aiden pressed the fob and the car chirped. He slid behind the wheel, triumphant. Dad beaming in the passenger seat. Mom clasping my hand. Ride with us? She asked. I'll take my own, I said, nodding toward my dented hatchback, a few spaces down paid off. Maintained with the kind of care you can't post on social media. Her smile faltered, then returned. See you at home, she said. I watched their taillights merge into traffic. 2 red points that looked for all the world like certainty. The night air smelled like exhaust and new beginnings. My phone buzzed with messages from classmates. I slipped into my car, set the envelope on the passenger seat, and sat there a moment with the engine off, listening to the soft tick of the cooling metal. I could hear my own voice in my head. Steady as a metronome, gather facts. Keep receipts. Breathe. Somewhere between the starter and the first turn out of the lot. A thought landed with the weight of something that had been circling for years. Families are teams until they need an accountant. Then they assign roles. I pulled into the street, the packet shifting slightly with the movement, and headed toward my apartment with the kind of quiet that means decisions are being made. I didn't know exactly what tomorrow would look like. I did know the first call I'd place in the morning. And I knew that if a signature could be copied once, it could be compared again under better light. By someone whose job was to tell the difference between a story and the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I stacked my diploma on the desk, slid the envelope of family obligations beneath it like a cracked foundation, and started packing. It wasn't dramatic, no slammed doors, no speeches, just the rhythmic zip of bags and the quiet decision to stop being the person who makes everything easy. I filled a duffel with clothes, another with cables, and a keyboard I trust more than most promises, and a banker's box with tax records, contracts, and an external drive labeled in neat half-inch letters, clients paid, divided by UN paid. I left the graduation cords draped over the chair. They looked like streamers after a party. Bright and a little sad. By 2 in the morning, my tiny apartment was down to essentials. The envelope rode shotgun on the pile by the door. A passenger I couldn't leave behind. I wrote a note and taped it to the fridge for myself. Because I know my own tricks keep receipts. Call the bank, pull full credit reports from all 3 bureaus. Ask for copies of signature cards. The practical steps calmed me. People think quiet kids avoid conflict. They don't realize how much we can carry as long as we know where each item goes. Around 3. I took one slow loop through every room the way you do before moving. Hand on the light switch. Eyes checking corners for anything you can't replace. A photo with my aunt at a county fair. The spare key to the car. A shoebox full of cables I'd salvaged from yard sales. The silence wasn't empty. It was focused. I left the keys for the landlord on the counter, along with a thank you note and July's rent. If this was my last night in this place, I wanted to leave it squared up. I should have known the drive would feel like a reset. The highway at night is honest. Headlights. Lines. The steady hum that tells you every mile is a choice. I watched the city fall behind and the map on my dash redraw itself in real time. 3 hours isn't far until you place it between yourself and people who think the line on a signature page matters less than a story they want to be true. The studio I found had a crooked window that faced an alley and a landlord named Joy who talked like she was always busy and glad about it. The place smelled faintly of fresh paint and someone else's coffee. And I fell for it on sight. It was small in a way I could measure 10 steps from the door to the window. 6 from the stove to the bed. The first night, I unrolled a sleeping bag on the floor, used a hoodie as a pillow, and stared at the ceiling. Aiden would be out taking someone for a spin in the black sedan. Windows down. A playlist he's been curating since sophomore year, blasting the chorus right at the moment he shifts. Mom would be setting the table with the good plates, because triumph deserves a border. Dad would be in the garage, rearranging boxes for the 3rd time because order makes him feel useful. And me, I set an alarm for 7:00 a.m. and added a sticky note to my laptop. 800 pull credit. People talk about favoritism like it's a feeling. But it's a pattern. You don't see it clearly until you lay the moments side by side. The first time I noticed I was good with responsibility, I was 11. Aiden left his bike in the driveway. Dad backed into it. The wheel bent like a paperclip. That night at dinner, Dad said, "We're a team," and looked at me when he said it. I signed up for a weekend mowing job to help replace what we lost. The guy on Maple Street paid $40 in cash and 2 sodas. Aiden got a new bike with shocks. I got a handshake and Dad's proud look that stretched across the table like a rubber band and snapped back when Mom reached for the salt. At 14, I won a scholarship for a summer coding camp, $600 off a $900 tuition. We were dry $100 short. Mom said, "We'll make it work." But the money never appeared. I took on a neighbor's spreadsheet project, $75 then. I negotiated $100 when they asked for 6 extra charts. I told myself I was learning the market. Aiden spent the same week at a beach tournament and came home with a tan and a new pair of sneakers sponsored by the team. That was the month I started tracking expenses in a notebook. On the inside cover, I wrote, "No one is coming. Plan accordingly." When I turned 16, the school announced a senior trip for the soccer team, Aiden's team, to Florida. The cost sheet landed. On the kitchen counter, airfare, hotel, meals, a line for miscellaneous. 1,000,000. 600 total. It's an opportunity, Mom said. I watched them cut 3 activities from our family's summer list so Aiden could go the night before his flight. I fixed the printer jam for the 4th time and printed my first invoice with my name at the top, Liam Bailey Freelance. It felt like laying a plank over a gap. Crossing is easier when you built the bridge. In college, the pattern got more expensive. The time Aiden's club planned an event and forgot to book the venue, deposit $750. "We'll cover it," Dad said. And then 2 days later called me to borrow, just until Friday. I covered it. Friday turned into 2 months. With a thank you and a promise that sounded more like a note slid under a closed door. "We'll make it up to you." The thing about promises is they make great bookmarks. You can stick them anywhere and come back later. But the page you're holding might not belong to you anymore. The morning after graduation, In the studio with the crooked window. I opened my laptop at 8 on the dot and went to the credit sites. I requested all 3 reports and watched the progress bars crawl like cautious snails. While they loaded, I made coffee in a dented French press. I rescued from a thrift store. The first report arrived. The second. The third. I clicked through to the adverse accounts section and saw them lined up like traffic cones. 3 loans I'd never agreed to. Each marked with my name as cosigner. Each stamped with dates that sat neatly inside the months I'd been drowning in capstone projects. I clicked dispute and read every line of instruction twice. You can do a lot with forms. People underestimate how much power they have when they read the fine print and follow directions. I saved copies of the letters I'd need to send, drafted a template requesting original applications and signature images, and opened a new folder titled Fraud Evidence. The naming felt dramatic and correct. I worked through my client queue next. I sent 2 proposals I'd been dragging my feet on because school was eating my calendar. One accepted in 10 minutes, $1,400 for a site rebuild with a 3-week timeline. The other asked for a call to scope it tighter, which usually means trim the nice-to-haves and nail down the musts. By noon, I had a whiteboard propped against the wall with project milestones sketched in dry erase. Week 1 audit and wireframes. Week 2 build, Week 3 testing and launch. I taped the envelope from my parents next to it where I could see it and not forget what it represented. The call started on day 3. Mom first. Hey. Sweetheart. Just checking in. How's the new place? Send pictures. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, call me when you can. That afternoon we were thinking of coming by to see you. Dad has your favorite granola from the co-op. I hit silent. Then turned my phone face down and worked on a navigation bar animation until my shoulders loosened. By day 5, the energy had shifted. Liam. It's Mom. Why aren't you answering? She tried cheerful, then worried, then indignant. All within 60 seconds. I sat on the floor to assemble a cheap shelving unit with an Allen key and let her cycle through. I wasn't keeping score. I was keeping boundaries. Aiden broke the pattern with a text. Dude. Stop being dramatic. They just need help. I stared at the screen for a full minute. There was no point arguing through pixels. I typed, not available. Then I blocked his number. It felt like cutting a thread that had been wrapped around my wrist so long I'd forgotten it was there. There was an indent when I looked. Pale and temporary. Dad tried email. The subject line read, family plan. The body was 2 paragraphs of explanation that never used the word sorry. He wrote about timing. About the opportunity to help your brother get started. About how we always knew you were the responsible one. He said they had taken out loans we can't easily repay and assumed you wouldn't mind. As if my savings were a community garden and they'd only picked a few tomatoes early. I read it twice. Then a third time. And slid it into the fraud evidence folder because it was exactly what it was and might matter later. A week in, I'd settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for client calls and code. Afternoons for documentation. Disputes. And getting the studio into shape. I bought a second-hand desk and a chair with a missing wheel I replaced with $4 from a hardware store. I cooked cheap, clean meals that tasted better than their price tags. At night, I walked the block and learned the sounds, a neighbor who plays piano just badly enough to be endearing. The timing of the upstairs shower. The recycling truck at 615 on Thursdays. It was a small life, and it was mine. 2 weeks after graduation. The tone of the call shifted again. The voicemails stacked like storm clouds. Mom. Unsteady, please. We didn't mean it like that. Dad. Hurried. Let's be sensible. Son. We can set terms. Aiden. Voice trying for lightness and missing bro. You're making this worse. I didn't answer any of them. I was in a meeting with a client explaining why we needed to delay their dark mode request to the second sprint. Because accessibility isn't a paint job. After the call, I closed my eyes and listened to the street outside for a full minute. My phone buzzed again. I set it to do not disturb and kept going. That afternoon, a letter arrived from one of the loan companies. We have received your dispute request. Please allow 30 days for review. If you believe identity theft may be involved. The language was careful and firm. It stabilized me. Someone else was now in the loop. Reading the same lines I had. And the rules would apply no matter What story had been told under our roof? The next voicemail from Mom landed late Sunday. A raw edge to every word. Liam. Please. We know we messed up. We're so sorry. We'll fix everything. Just come home. We need you. The house behind her sounded too quiet. Like even the refrigerator was listening. I held the phone away and let the message finish. I could hear younger me creeping up behind that moment. The kid who used to rush to fix a thing as soon as he knew how. But this wasn't a printer jam or a router reset. This was a ledger. And ledgers live in the world. Not just in living rooms. I opened my laptop and searched for a number I'd bookmarked that morning while reading Dispute FAQs, a law office that specialized in consumer protection and financial fraud. The contact page listed a free consultation and a direct line. I hovered over the call button and pictured Aiden's key fob glittering under graduation sun. The way Mom had said, "It's only fair." The signatures that looked like mine and weren't. I thought about the mustard ring on the jar from years ago. A detail so small, it didn't matter to anyone else, but that's how stains begin. And how some stories harden into rules. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I let it roll to the end as the cursor blinked on the law office number. I took a breath. Steady and slow. And touched the screen. I made the call on a Monday morning. When coffee still tasted like the beginning of something and the city hadn't fully decided if it wanted to be loud. The law office receptionist sounded brisk and steady in the way that makes you trust the next step before you know what it is. Consumer protection. Forged instruments. Identity, misuse, we handle those. She said. Can you bring documents? Originals if you have them. Scans if you don't. I showed up with a folder labeled in block letters fraud evidence. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. A framed certificate of appreciation from some community clinic hung slightly crooked. Details like that calm me, they say. People here work? Not pose. My attorney's name was Carmichael. But he told me to call him Sam within 2 minutes. He had a precise way of moving a pen. Lining it parallel to the legal pad. And listening, with his chin just barely lifted. I told him everything: the envelope, the car, the signatures that looked like mine, the history that made the present make too much sense. He didn't interrupt. Just wrote dates and amounts: $3. Lambe, 1美元. 450 cents, 5美元. 000, and 3 loan account numbers ending with 173. 942, 611. When I finished, he slid my copies toward him and asked for one specific thing. Do you have any known samples of your signature from the same time frame I did tax returns? A lease addendum. A UPS pickup slip I'd kept because the driver had used my last name as a joke, and I'd written Bailey Bailey under it to make sure my package didn't disappear. We lined them up next to the loan signatures. The differences were small but real: where my L rises. There's curled, where my Y tails off. There's snapped upward, as if impatient. Look, Sam said softly, drawing a rectangle around the last letters. This is pressure pattern. It matters. He didn't say open and shut. He said, actionable. He laid out steps in that careful, stepstone way lawyers do: file identity theft reports with the credit bureaus, place a fraud alert and a freeze, draft a police report for record, even if I didn't want to push criminal charges. The report would anchor the timeline, notify the lenders by certified mail. Return receipt requested, demand original applications and IP logs for any digital submissions, insist on removal of the accounts pending investigation, and, as for my parents, send a cease and desist regarding any further use of my identity and a notice that any contact about family obligations was to be routed through counsel. You have leverage, he said. Use it slowly and precisely. No big chisteris. Paper moves the world. Do I have to press charges? I asked. The words tasting unfamiliar. It felt like asking whether gravity could take a break. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. He answered. We can escalate or stall depending on their behavior. But we need a baseline. And we need to stop the bleeding. He dictated a letter while I sat and watched each sentence land specific. Unadorned. Undeniable. When he got to the part where he referenced forged co-signer signatures and unauthorized indebtedness, I felt something unclench between my shoulder blades. Sometimes the most compassionate word is the accurate one. By afternoon, Certified letters were printed and sealed. My credit was frozen, and an official report had a number I could cite. I walked back to the studio through air that had warmed without me noticing, carrying my copies in a stiff paper envelope that snapped when I shifted it. There was a blue mug on my desk, chipped at the rim from a move years ago. I set the envelope next to it and stared at both. The chip has always faced me like a reminder: use the other side if you want to avoid blood. Small adjustments keep you safe, but they also teach you to accept damage as normal. The first call from Aiden came 2 days after Sam's letters went out. I almost didn't answer, but the preview on my screen showed 3 voicemails in a row. The 4th time, I picked up. Liam. His voice had lost that confident glide. It sounded like a shoe catching on a stair. I'm here. He exhaled. They silence. They sold the car. I sat down slowly. The chair's missing wheel, clicking against the mat. An imperfect mechanical heartbeat. Sold it. They didn't have a choice. He rushed. Payments piled up. The insurance was more than they thought. He stopped like the words had hit a seam. For a second, I saw it. Aiden standing in the driveway, staring at the empty space where the black sedan had sat. A patch of cleaner concrete outlined the absence, like chalk around an outline. For all my anger, loss is still a shape you can recognize. You didn't have to lose it, I said. I didn't add the rest out loud. You could have done this different. You could have asked hard questions with me. Not about me. You should have warned us it would. You know, go this way, he said, like the future had been a hallway I'd closed off. I did, I said calmly. For years. He swallowed. I heard it. Then his voice wobbled. Not with performance, but with something raw. There's more. I waited. Dad might lose his job, he said. Someone at the company heard about the loans, about the signatures, and filed a report with HR. There's some compliance thing. They said it's a conflict of interest if he has undisclosed obligations, or, I don't know the exact policy. He's meeting with them on Friday. Of course, there was a policy. Even if he didn't handle money, ethics has a way of showing up when paper begs questions. And Mom, I asked. Racing. She hasn't left the house in days. He cleared his throat like he could rearrange the emotion by moving it around. She keeps saying it wasn't supposed to be like this. It took me a second to find my voice. The image that came was not Mom at the graduation, smiling like the world was tidy. It was Mom at the sink late at night when we were little, scrubbing a casserole dish with the same circular motion over and over, long after it was clean. Because something else needed doing, and this was the nearest thing. Part of me almost felt guilty. Almost. But guilt without accountability is a trap. You sit in it and call it kindness while the bottom drops out. Aiden, I said. They chose this. There was a beat where I could feel him searching for the old language. The one that had always worked: family. Team. Understand. It failed him. And he sounded younger when he finally spoke. Can you talk to them, please? I have. Through my lawyer. I kept my tone even. They forged my name. That's not a misunderstanding. It's a crime. I'm not pressing charges right now. But I'm protecting myself. That's not revenge. That's adulthood. He started crying then. With the quiet kind that makes more noise in the space around it than it does on the phone. I thought he didn't finish. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe the sentence was too old to say out loud. I thought you would fix it. Get a job, I said softly. Pay what you can. Stop looking for a net that requires me to fall. I ended the call because there are places you can't go for someone else. That evening, I forwarded Sam a copy of Dad's email and the notes from the call. He replied with 2 lines. Good. Keep everything. If their company reaches out, route them to me. The next morning, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Then listened. Phone on speaker. Hands flat on the desk like I was bracing a map. Liam, she began. And her voice had that tired tremble I remembered from the flu season when Aiden and I were 8 and took turns throwing up while she washed sheets. Please. We know we messed up. We're so sorry. We'll fix everything. Just come home. We need you. My mouth went dry. We're so sorry. 3 words that should have been a key and instead sounded like a knock that arrived after midnight. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Liam, you're sorry. I said. Not as a question. If she wanted the script, we were going to say it together. Yes. She said. We never meant for you to be hurt. You bought Aiden a car. I said. And handed me your bills. You put my name on loans. I didn't sign. Your father thought. Mom? I said. And the words stopped her. You didn't think about me. Not once. You thought about a story where the responsible son doesn't mind. There was a small sound. Like a chair being pushed back. You knew about the signatures, she asked. And I could hear the moment a myth in her head cracked. I know everything. I said. I know I could press charges. I'm not. Not yet. You don't need my help to wreck yourselves. You're doing that fine. She took a shaky breath. We didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught. I finished. Silence on both ends for a few seconds stretched, so long it felt like a room we could move into. Dad came on the line then. Voice rough. Son. He said. And the words sounded worn. We were wrong. We just wanted to give Aiden something special. Mom whispered in the background. As if tenderness could be evidence. You did? I said. And I let the words land clean. You gave him everything. Including the lesson that actions have consequences. I ended the call. Not to be cruel. But because sometimes the only loving thing is to hang up before you say something you can't walk back. Hours later. A notification popped up from one of the lenders. We have temporarily removed the disputed co-signed loans from your credit report while the investigation proceeds. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in a month. Paper moves the world. That week, I added 2 new clients. Work felt like a steady walkway over a deep ravine, sturdy. Tested. Mine. I mailed a second set of letters, copies of my police report number. A renewed demand for original documents. And a line Sam suggested. Any further attempts to collect from me on the basis of these accounts will be considered a violation and addressed accordingly. Clarity is a form of mercy. Thursday night. I walked past a corner deli. I'd never noticed open late. In the window, when a jar of mustard sat with a ring of dried yellow at the rim. Just like the one from back home. And I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that surprises you. The world is full of small echoes. You get to decide which ones you answer. Friday morning. An email from Dad arrived. Meeting went badly. Suspended pending review. No apology. Just the facts this time. As if he finally understood how to speak to me when the stakes were real. I forwarded it to Sam, and then closed my laptop and sat with my hands around the chipped blue mug. The good side turned toward me. I almost felt guilty again. Almost. But I remembered the empty driveway where the car had been. The signatures that weren't mine. The long line of small favors that had been rehearsals for a larger theft. And the feeling faded like fog under noon sun. The phone stayed quiet for 2 days. On Sunday afternoon, it rang again. I didn't want to pick up. I did anyway. Boundaries don't mean silence forever. They mean choosing when to speak. Liam. Mom said. Voice raw enough to cut paper. Please. We know. We're sorry. We'll fix everything. Just come home. Home. It's a word that either means safety or receipts. I let the silence be my answer, long enough for her to hear it. You can be sorry. I said finally. But you can't be surprised that I'm protecting myself. We love you. She said. Like love could be a notarized document. I believe you. I said. Love doesn't fix years of favoritism. Boundaries do. When I hung up, the studio felt small and exactly the right size. The crooked window let in an afternoon slice of light that landed on the envelope of copies and the legal pad where I'd been sketching a sitemap. The chip in the mug caught the light too. A tiny bright crescent. I turned it away from me. Out of habit. Then turned it back and sipped carefully. Some risks are worth taking when you're the one choosing them. Sam called first thing Monday. 2 lenders acknowledged receipt. One has already flagged the accounts as under investigation. Hold your line. His voice carried the calm of someone who believes in paper trails more than promises. I thanked him. Hung up. and stared at the crooked window until the alley below organized itself into a scene delivery truck. A cyclist. A kid dragging a trash bin that squeaked every third step. The world kept moving, which felt both rude and reassuring. At noon, my doorbell rang. "No one visits," Mayun announced. I checked the peephole. Martha and Greg on the landing. Dressed like they were going to a parent-teacher conference. Careful clothes. Eyes too bright. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it. "Steady. You need to leave." "Sweetheart," Mom said, the word coming out damp. "We drove 3 hours." "So did I," I said. "When I moved." Dad's voice tried for firm and landed in frayed. "Let us in. Liam. We can talk like a family." "A family that forges signatures," I said. "No." Keys rattled, nervous habit. Not threat. Mom's voice tilted toward performance. "We didn't come to fight. We brought lunch. Your favorite wrap from that place you like." "You've never been to this neighborhood," I said. "You don't know my favorite anything here." Silence. A short one, but the kind that rearranges everyone's posture. I breathed through my nose the way Sam told me to do before hard calls. "If you want to communicate, email Sam. You have his address. You got a lawyer against your own parents," Dad said. And I could hear the old shame script being slid across the table like a bill I was expected to pay. "I got a lawyer to protect myself from a crime," I said. "I'm not opening the door." Mom's voice softened to a thread. "We were going to surprise Aiden with that car since his freshman year. We started saving and then things got tight. We didn't want him to feel like we had nothing for him. Not after all his." She stopped herself before she said achievements, as if the word might burst the balloon. "We were trying to balance." "Balance," I repeated. "That's an interesting term for handing one twin a car and the other a bill." "We misjudged," Dad said quickly, sizing a safer verb. "We misjudged the timing." I pictured the graduation sun, the key fob gleaming like a small trophy. "You misjudged the ethics," I said. "Please leave." They didn't move. I could hear their feet shift on the welcome mat I hadn't bought. My landlord had. "Liam." Mom tried again. "If we drive home now, will you at least call later?" "Route it through Sam," I said, and turned the deadbolt so they'd hear it. A thin sound, but unmistakable. After a moment, their footsteps retreated. I stayed there another full minute, forehead against the door, until the hallway swallowed their echo. Inside, I filled the chipped blue mug and stared at the missing glaze where the porcelain showed through. I thought about the ring of mustard on the jar from childhood. That thin, crusted circle no one wiped away. The family always moved around it, as if admitting it existed would make the sandwich taste different. I set the mug down and opened my laptop. Work, like law, has a rhythm that saves. That evening, a group chat of college friends lit up photos of new apartments. A thread arguing about which coffee shop had the best cinnamon rolls. A meme about job postings requiring entry-level candidates with 5 years experience. Aiden's name flashed once, then vanished. He must have left the thread. I typed a brief note. I moved. New studio. I'll host when I get chairs that don't pretend to be chairs, and muted the chat. The world of people my age felt like a train leaving a station in good weather. I wasn't on it. I was on a parallel track. Slower, but mine. Tuesday. Sam forwarded a response from one lender's legal department. They acknowledged receipt of my dispute, suspended collection, and would endeavor to provide original applications and any IP-related submission data within the statutory timeframe. The language made my shoulders drop 2 inches. Effort paired with obligation is a beautiful thing. Wednesday morning. I got an email from Dad. No greeting. No sign-off. Just suspension confirmed. Pending internal review for failure to disclose obligations. Might be okay. I read it twice, then realized might be okay was less an update and more a wish. I forwarded it to Sam, who replied with one sentence. Still their problem. That night, I set up a tiny card table by the crooked window and ate pasta with butter and pepper. The kind of dinner that tastes like competence. I allowed myself 10 minutes of imagining an alternate universe, one where graduation day ended with a used car for each of us and a real budget talk, where my parents said, "We can't afford that." And no one's identity complicated the truth. Then, I did the dishes and put the imagining back on the shelf like a book I'd outgrown. Thursday. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Aiden. Alone. Hands jammed into the pockets of a hoodie that used to make him look like an advertisement for Easy Charm, and now made him look like he'd borrowed clothes from a younger version of himself. I considered not opening. I opened anyway, leaving the chain on. He stared at it. Really? Yes. He rubbed his face. I get it, he said. And it was the first time he hadn't led with a joke or an angle. Can we talk out here? We sat on the stairs. An odd reverse mirror of the nights we'd sat on the porch back home, arguing about music and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He kept looking at my door like he wanted to earn the right to walk through it. I got a job, he said, without preamble. Entry-level sales. It's not glamorous. Glamour is expensive, I said. You can't finance it forever. He snorted. A brief surprise sound. True. Then the words slowed. Dad's hearing was worse than he told you. He isn't fired. Yet. But they moved him to a department where he can't approve anything. He says it feels like being parked with the engine running. I pictured Greg at a desk facing a wall instead of a window. His authority rerouted around him. Consequences have a shape. They don't always announce themselves with sirens. Mom wants to sell the house. Aiden went on. Downsize, before they're forced. She keeps holding the banister when she walks downstairs like the house is a person she's saying goodbye to. We listened to the building's radiator clank on. A tired percussion. He cleared his throat. I told her I'd help. Not with words. With, you know, money. My money? It felt new. I nodded. Once, he watched my face like it was a dashboard, and he wanted to know if the warning lights were on. You hate me, he said lightly. Testing it. I don't, I said. And watched that land. But I'm not a net you can bounce on. He stared at his shoes. I used to believe you liked being the fixer. I liked being competent, I said. There's a difference. We sat there a while. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's takeout. Ginger and garlic. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. Why didn't you tell me earlier, like freshman year earlier? When you started saving and I started not. I let the question sit. The easy answer was I did. But the honest answer was not in a way you could hear. I went with honest. I tried. You had a whole crowd telling you another story. And the story I was telling wasn't exciting. It sounded like no. He picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. I'm trying to learn no, he said. It turns out no is a muscle. We were quiet again. A door opened down the hall. A neighbor shuffled out with a bag of recycling that clinked. Aiden looked at me. Are you going to press charges? I took a breath. Not today. I'm not ruling it out. That's not a threat. It's a boundary. He nodded like he didn't want to but had to. If you had pressed, would they go to? He stopped. Not finishing the thought. He didn't need to. The words hung there anyway. And we both watched them float toward the ceiling and dissolve. Actions have consequences, I said, echoing my own sentence from the call, and felt how hard-earned it sounded coming back. He stood, like he'd remembered he was supposed to be moving. Okay, I'll go. I just wanted you to see me trying. I see you, I said. Try again tomorrow. When I closed the door, I didn't turn the deadbolt right away. I stood with my hand on it and counted to 20. A ritual I used to do before tests when I was 12. Then I locked it and went back to the card table. The to-do list sat there with neat boxes. I checked one, talked to Aiden without fixing. Friday was quiet. Then not. An envelope slid under my door, no return address. Handwriting I knew. I brought it to the table like it was a small animal and opened it carefully. Inside a photocopy of a check I'd written 6 years ago to cover a family utility bill. And a note in Dad's hand will repay everything. We keep records too. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't apology. It read like someone groping for a new language and grabbing a familiar word by mistake. I placed the note under the blue mug for a minute, as if the weight would flatten it into sense. Then emailed a photo of it to Sam with a single line, "Acknowledgement." He replied, "Yep. Keep it." That night, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the window like it had something urgent to say. I lay awake and counted seconds between lightning and thunder. When sleep finally came, it brought a dream of the old kitchen. Mustard jar open. The ring freshly wiped. The counter clean. In the dream, I looked up and everyone was there, waiting to see if I'd notice. I did. I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because someone finally washed the rim. Saturday morning. The rain had rinsed the city. I made coffee, worked through a bug in a client's checkout flow, and answered 2 emails stacked with exclamation points demanding overnight timelines. I sent boundaries back. Precisely Monday. EOD is realistic. My finger hovered over send. I thought about Aiden's question, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" and wondered if I had just learned to tell myself. Every day. In small, unspectacular ways. At noon, a message arrived from a distant aunt who rarely surfaced, except for holiday chain texts. "Heard a lot is going on. If you need a neutral couch to sit and breathe, ours is open." I stared at it, surprised at the clean generosity of an offer with no conditions. I typed, "Thank you," and left it there. A wick I could light, if I needed to. By evening, the city had regained its noise. A delivery scooter zipped by. Someone on the street below laughed too loudly at something that probably wasn't that funny. I held the blue mug, turning it so the chip faced me. Then away. Then back again. Choice. Consequence. Practice. None of it dramatic. All of it real. When the phone rang on Sunday, I knew the number, the house I grew up in. I let it buzz 3 times and picked up. "Liam." Mom said. Voice sanded down. "We're listing the house. We don't expect you to come help pack. We wanted you to know." I leaned against the counter and looked out at the alley. At a new graffiti tag that appeared overnight, 3 clean letters. Balanced. "Okay." I said. "We're sorry." She added, as if those words could carry boxes. "I heard you." I said. Hearing and trusting are different things. Thrust comes later. If it comes at all. A breath. Shaky, but contained. "We'll try to earn it." After we hung up, I opened my notebook and wrote 3 lines. Keep every letter. Protect the life you're building. If they truly change, you'll see it without squinting. I closed the notebook and slid it under the keyboard. A foundation I chose. Outside, the last puddles were losing their edges. The day clicked forward one small, honest increment. Somewhere down the block, a jar lid tightened with a clean, satisfying sound. A month can pass loudly or quietly. This one passed like a train in the night there if you listened. Gone if you blinked. Work stacked into a decent rhythm morning sprints. Afternoon fixes. Invoices sent and paid. I replaced the missing wheel on my chair with a sturdy one that didn't squeak. And it felt symbolic in the small way I could tolerate form follows function. Then follows life. The crooked window still leaned slightly. But I'd learned when the alley brightened and when the shadows made it feel like a frame. I kept my credit frozen. Checked on the disputes every few days. And answered Sam's emails with short, factual updates that made us both sound like we lived inside a well-organized file cabinet. Which is why the package surprised me. No return address. Just my name and handwriting. I knew better than my own mom's loops and careful spacing. The way she's always taken pride in how clean words can look. It arrived on a Tuesday at 1017 a.m. The same minute a client asked me to just make it pop. And I laughed once. Sharp. Because the timing felt absurdly on brand. I set the package on the card table and stared at it while I finished a call. Then cut the tape and slid the flaps open like I was handling something that could startle. Inside a box of old photos, a sealed envelope, and a folded piece of cloth. I recognized immediately a kitchen towel with sunflowers printed too bright. The one Mom reserved for company. Which meant it lived in a drawer and came out twice a year. There was a note on top. Short, we're not asking you to come home. We just wanted you to have some of this. The sealed envelope carried the weight. I opened it slowly and found a letter that didn't waste any words. We don't expect forgiveness. We understand that trust may not return. We are sorry. We are selling the house. We are paying what we owe. We are learning how to keep records. If there is a way to make amends beyond money, tell us when you are ready. M and G. The signature initials looked strange without the sweeping flourish Mom used for holiday cards. Greg's G was smaller than usual. Humility does that to handwriting. I held the paper for a long minute, feeling the texture, wondering how many drafts it took to get to this clean, undecorated apology. I set it beside the blue mug chip facing me. Because today I wanted to see the flaw and sip anyway, and reached into the box of photos. There we were at 5. Aiden and I on the front steps with popsicles, neon tongues, and knobby knees. There was Dad in a shirt with a loud pattern, holding a rake like a trophy next to a leaf pile so big it looked like another person. There was Mom in her wedding dress, laughing off to the side at something out of frame, her mouth open wide in a way I hadn't seen in years. Another envelope sat at the bottom, thinner, addressed in Aiden's blocky handwriting. Do not read until you're done rolling your eyes. I opened it. Got promoted. He wrote. Okay. Not promoted. Promoted. But my manager says I'm good with people and not terrible with spreadsheets. I pay rent on my own. I sent money to Mom and Dad without being asked. Felt weird. Good weird. I don't expect a parade. Just wanted you to know I'm not a passenger. P.S. I hate that I needed a wall to learn how to stop running into it. I smiled despite myself. I didn't trust the feeling. Not yet. But I respected the trajectory. I snapped photos of the letter from my parents and Aiden's note and sent them to Sam. For the file, I wrote. He replied with a thumbs up and, after a beat. Also, that's the first clean admission I've seen from them. Keep the originals in a dry place. That afternoon, my aunt, the same one who'd offered the neutral couch, called. She has a gift for saying what's true without making it feel like a verdict. They listed the house today. She said, your mom cried in the pantry because it was the only place without an echo. Your dad found the manual for the garage door opener and filed it in a folder labeled assets, which tells you how his brain is coping. Aiden picked up a shift and dropped off boxes. Nobody mentioned you to me, but your name hung in the air like a missing picture on a wall. Thank you for telling me. I said. I'm not on anyone's team. She said gently. I'm on the side of choices that make tomorrow more livable. If you need a place to sit with that. Our couch is still neutral. When we hung up, I brewed tea instead of coffee and set the cup where the mug usually lived, just to see if the pattern would break. It didn't. The routines I'd built were mine precisely because they could flex without collapsing. I worked until 7. Ateposta again. And took a walk around the block. The deli's window held the same jar of mustard, but the ring at the rim was gone. Someone had wiped it clean. The sight landed with an unexpected, quiet thud in my chest. Days. Then a week. The lenders followed their timelines. One sent a packet that included a scan of the loan application with a signature that almost fooled me until I compared letter by letter. Another sent IP addresses tied to submissions that matched my parents' home network. Sam called that one a gift from the gods of documentation. The third dragged its feet. But the fraud flags held. My credit report began to look like mine again, like a mirror that had finally been cleaned after a party. On a Thursday, Aiden called at lunchtime. I let it ring twice and picked up. I won't take long, he said. I know you're working. You can talk, I said. Small things, he began. And I braced for a story. I made Mom and Dad set up autopay for their utilities. We went through every account and wrote down passwords. I made a spreadsheet. Liam. I know. Me. And I told them I won't be asking you for anything. If I can help, I will. But not by selling you. He went quiet. The phrase sat between us. Exactly right. Good, I said. That's the shape of growing up. I keep waiting for a pat on the head, he admitted. And then I remember that's not how this works. I'm making this list for me. He cleared his throat. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to be a reliable person in your life someday. I get it if the answer is not today. Not today, I said softly. But you're on a path that has an exit ramp. We said goodbye with no promises, which felt like progress. The house sold faster than I expected. My aunt texted a photo of the sold rider slapped onto the sign. She didn't send an interior shot, but I could see the living room in my mind, the couch with the sun-faded arm, the dent in the carpet where the coffee table sat, the framed achievement certificates and team photos and Father's Day cards, my third-grade science fair ribbon tucked behind the glass of Aiden's varsity letter, like a bookmark someone thought they might want later. My chest ached. But it wasn't grief exactly. It was release mixed with something like relief. The sensation you get when a cast comes off and your skin feels new in the air. On moving week, a courier knocked. Another envelope. This one, with a notarized statement inside my parents, formally acknowledging the fraudulent co-signatures and withdrawing any claim that I owed them for family obligations. The letter used words that meant something in court. A sticky note from Mom was attached to the back. We are trying to say the right thing the right way. I placed it in the folder and felt the strange weight of a door clicking shut final. Clean. Not cruel. I didn't go back to help them pack. I sent a practical message. Please route any documents to Sam. I wish you a safe move. Mom replied with a simple thank you. Dad didn't reply at all, which might have been his way of not making it about him for once. The day they left the house, Aiden called from an empty room that echoed. It's weird, he said. You can hear yourself think too loudly. You'll get used to it, I said. Loud thoughts settle if you let them. I found something in the pantry, he added. And my heart jerked once I pictured shoeboxes, ledger books, a stack of bills turned to fossils. The mustard jar, he said. And I laughed, despite the tightness in my throat. Nodding, he added. Mom wiped it. She said she got tired of pretending mess was flavor. We were silent for a few breaths that felt like a truce. Take care, I said. You too, he answered. I'll call when I have something worth saying. The studio felt steady that evening. The radiator hissed. The alley compiled its usual cast delivery bikes. The neighbor's cat weaving through a crepe pile. A kid practicing ollies on a skateboard. I cooked, read, worked, slept. The next morning, I woke to a light that made the crooked window look like an intentional choice. I made coffee in the blue mug and didn't turn the chip away. I didn't turn it toward me either. I just held it like an object with a history that didn't have to tell me what to do. By month's end, the credit bureaus sent official letters confirming the removal of the fraudulent accounts. The lines that weren't mine were gone. In their place, a note that an identity theft report had been filed and resolved. Sam called to say, we can close the file on our end. Keep everything for 7 years. Live your life. I walked to the deli and bought the jar of mustard that had been sitting in the window. Because some symbol deserve retirement. The cashier laughed when I asked. That old thing. Sure. $2. At home. I opened it and wiped the rim clean with the sunflower towel. It felt ceremonial and mundane at once. That's the sweet spot I wanted to live in, where gestures mattered. But not more than the daily work of staying clear. That night, a final package arrived. No return address again. But the handwriting was steadier. Inside, a single page. We are in a smaller place. It is enough. We are learning to live within enough. We hope one day to earn a coffee with you. We won't ask when. We'll wait to be invited. Mom and Dad. Nothing else. No photos. No sudden appeals. It went into the folder. Then after a thought onto the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tiny house I'd picked up at a street fair. I wanted to see it when I reached for milk. Not as a victory. As a north. On my way out the door. I dropped the first letter, the one that came with the box of photos, into the trash can by habit, and then paused. I fished it back out. Smoothed the crease. And filed it with the others. Keeping records isn't cold. It's a way of honoring the path you took to become a person you can trust. I locked the door behind me and stepped into a night that didn't ask for drama. Somewhere, a block over. Someone laughed the way people do when a joke lands exactly right. My phone stayed quiet. My shoulders sat where they belonged. Choices had consequences. So did boundaries. And if anyone ever asked me how it ended, I think I'd say not with a shout. Not with a hug. But with a clean rim on a jar. A file closed. A life that fits. And a door I open on my own terms.